Welcome to the Bear With Me podcast. On this week's episode, I'm going to be joined by a friend of mine, Britt. In our time together, we're going to be discussing our understanding of body positivity, talk about its impact on our lives, its relevance in Black culture, social media's role in either helping or harming how we see our body, and how nudism connects to it all. Stay tuned and bear with me. This is the Bear With Me podcast, and I'm your host, Jay. And who am I? I'm a 33-year-old Black man in America who just happens to be a nudist. My identity as a Black man and a nudist plays a significant role in how I've come to see the world. I came to find nudism through my journey into body positivity, but we'll get back to that in a sec. Welcome to my world. I think it's critically important to reflect on my journey in nudism up to this point in order to understand the impact my past has on where I'm going. If you've chosen to join me on this journey today, thank you. I appreciate it. It'll all be worth it. Bear with me. Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Bear With Me podcast. I'm your host, Jay, and today I'm here with a special guest, Britt. What's going on?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on with you? So, for the people who are going to be listening, this is the Bear With Me podcast, and on this podcast, we're going to be talking about all things body positivity, all things self-love, reflecting on culture, Blackness, talking about my chosen way to loving myself, which was nudism. Is it for everybody or is it not? You know, we're going to talk about all these things, but I'm just interested in kind of knowing a little bit more about you. So for a few seconds, if you want to just talk a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the people.
Hey, I'm Britt, born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri, the home of the Chiefs, the Super Bowl
Okay,
champions.
not too much.
Okay. I now reside in Dallas, Texas, but Kansas City always be home, like I tell Jay. Met Jay in Kansas City. We was in school. I was actually going to Longview. He was going to UMKC, but I had homegirls and stuff that went to UMKC, so that's how I met Jay. But yeah, I live in Dallas. I go home every now and then. Kansas City always gonna be home, so I'll be home again in a couple weeks for the 4th. But yeah, that's me.
As you just said, we met, I want to say over 10 years ago now in Kansas City.
Yeah.
It's crazy how life just comes, full circle. I always say, like, when you meet good people and just good vibes is in the air, like that energy tends to come back around. And for the sake of this podcast episode, I'm super excited and super happy that did come back around. A little bit about how we got here today. I put out a message on social media just kind of announcing that I had a podcast. I didn't really have any identifiers. I didn't really tell anybody what the podcast was about. All I had was a logo, and I put it out there. And one of the first people to comment and say anything about interest in knowing about what it was Britt. So do you remember that moment?
Yes.
So what was the first thing?
I don't even know what made me do it. I'm like, I'm just about to he my homeboy, I'm a support. Let me go ahead and just get on here. I didn't know what it was about until you had messaged me, but I mean, support is support. So whether you know what it's about or you don't know what it's about, if it's your friend, you support them. So why not?
Absolutely. And that's really what it was. It was really a logo, sight unseen. And you was just like, yo, you didn't even ask what it was about. You were more like, yo, I'm down. And then it was me that was kind of like, well, let me send you some details about the episodes, about the podcast. So at least you'll know what we're talking about and you can decide. I sent you a little blurb and you were game. So here we are. Again, I can't thank you enough. The support means a lot. This is a journey that I've been on, typically more so by myself for at least over 12 years. And it's just now, as of late, that I'm being a little bit more open about my experiences. I had a conversation with one of my best friends a little while back, and I don't know how we got to talking about this, because we went from talking about like rap beef and hip hop and football and stuff like that to talking about things that we were insecure about. Again, this is one of my best friends, so like we've talked about like relationships, we've talked about therapy, so we've talked about deep things, but it seemed like we had never like crossed that friendship threshold in which we talked about like body positivity things. Like that's not something you talk to your homeboys about, right? But it's
Right.
crazy because in me kind of sharing my experience, and this was my best friend, one of my best friends, and I told him that I was a nudist for the first time, and I had already been in part of that lifestyle for about 8 or 9 years at that point. And when I opened up and talked to him about it, the first question that he asked was like, "What made you start?" And we jumped immediately into talking about like insecurities and stuff like that. And I was like, "Wait, are other friends having these conversations?" And then I realized that a lot of friends don't talk about stuff like this because it's deeply rooted, in insecurity. Talking about bodies, talking about nakedness, talking about all these things are so rooted in shame and insecurity. People tend to hide them. And so I got this idea. I was like, what would it look like if I took these conversations that we have all the time in nudist communities? It's really freeing and accepting and loving in these communities because, I mean, upon meeting somebody for the first time, you see everything that they would typically hide, right? So
Right.
I had an idea. This was years ago. And I was like, what would it look like to have these conversations across all friendships, across all relationships? And so this idea, this podcast is about 3 or 4 years old, but as of right now in 2024, I finally decided to do something with it. So thank you again. So in thinking about what we, just that little intro and what I just said, I guess thinking back on your life growing up, what conscious or subconscious lessons were you taught about your body, or maybe just bodies in general?
Okay, so let me just put this out there. I'm a
And
BBW.
what does that mean for the people?
I'm 280. Right. I'm 280. I'm top heavy. I'm not really back heavy, but I've been losing weight. So I originally was 330. I never would get over 330. I would always go between 325 and
Okay.
330. Been the same weight since high school. Played basketball, did stuff like that. But when we were growing up, now how everybody, BBW this, BBW that, this is SNIS. We weren't the ones that everybody wanted back in the day. And when I say back in the day, I mean like I'm a 90s baby, so I'm 91. So I'm gonna say when we was in middle school, high school, when everybody started getting the boyfriends and stuff, didn't nobody want the fat girl. Nobody wanted the fat girl. I've never been insecure in my body.
That's good.
Yeah, never been insecure, never have been one of those people that's been like, oh, I have to be skinny, I have to be skinny. Even now, being 32 years old, I'm not a girl that wants to be skinny. I want to be just happy. I
Yeah.
want to be
Yeah.
me. So my goal weight is to be 220, but I don't want to be, I've never been wanting to be a skinny girl, like I said. I've never been one that's been unhealthy when it comes, because everybody, want to say, oh, she's fat, she's overweight, she's obese, she's sick. Or they think, oh, you have diabetes, you have this, you have that. And that's not always the case. Majority of the time, you know, us ones that are bigger don't have issues, and the ones that are smaller do have issues. So like I said, I've never been insecure. I've always had smaller friends. Like I said, the dudes will go for my smaller friends, but I've never been insecure in that because I always knew that there is somebody for me. Nowadays, it's, they prefer us, or the ones that I run into prefer the bigger
Okay,
women.
you got me over here taking notes because you unpacked a lot like really quickly. I mean, we aren't even 10 minutes into the episode. So one thing, no, this is perfect. This is perfect. This is exactly what we need. One of the first things you said is that you never wanted to be skinny, that you've always kind of loved your body and loved, who you are. And I think that's important to name, like, especially within the first 10 minutes of an episode, right? I think when you start off an episode and you kind of come out to the world and tell everybody, like, yeah, I'm BBW, right? I think there's this perception that people who identify similarly carry this insecurity, right? Like,
Yeah.
because you may be 220, 230, 320, 330, that you carry this shame for your weight or how you present. But I love that you kind of started the episode and just kind of came out and announced to everybody, like, yo, I am who I am. This is who I am, and I love it. And I've never felt this way because, like I said, that's not something that's often connected with people who identify as BBW. People automatically think that, like, oh, they must be insecure because of society and how society defines beauty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then you also talked about, and I think we can definitely jump on this later in the episode, but you talked about, like, back then they didn't want me. Now I'm hot. They all on
Right.
me, right? Shout out to Mike Jones, right? But I think society is shifting in real time, right? Because I definitely remember, being young and having friends of mine who identified as BBW even back then, being talked about, being teased, being criticized, and made to feel less than, right? And then these same friends of mine now in their 30s, I mean, they can't keep people off of them, to be honest. So it's crazy how, like, culture shifts, but sometimes the insecurities or the thoughts that we develop about ourselves in times when we may not have been favorable, we have to work extra hard to shed those things once we are in a situation where we are favorable. But to your point, I'm glad that you didn't have to deal with the insecurities and shame about who you are and how you present. So shout out to you.
Thank you.
So where do you think that comes from?
It's society.
I'm talking about the
Um.
confidence that you have. Like,
Oh. I don't know. I just think it comes from just, it comes from having. I don't want to say having us. You know what it is. So having a single parent. My mom, she was married for 15 years to my dad. Well, over 15 years actually. But my dad was on vacation, aka in jail for 15
okay,
years.
okay,
And I watched my mama, work her jobs, go to school, do everything she needed to do. So that's where, like, really my confidence come from. And then, like, just being around all women in my family, besides uncles and stuff like that, and just seeing how they move, how they have their confidence, that was really instilled in me, especially with my grandmother and my big mama. When you grow up with your great grandparents and your grandparents, they instill different things in you that you don't get from your actual parents. So my big mama and my big daddy was 80 years old, married 70 plus years.
oh wow, that is
So
beautiful.
you learn different things. Yeah, you learn different things from your great grandparents and your grandparents versus your parents. Like, you learn, like, my big mom and big daddy got married when, you know, you had no choice but to stay home, take care of the kids, and he went out to work. But you had to make sure he came home, if that makes sense. So you had to do what you had to do at home and take care of your household. So, you learn different things. So I just had that confidence from, just the people in my family, especially, when you're, everybody's big on affirmations. So back then that wasn't a big thing. But, when you're growing up and, your mom and your grandma and your great grandma tell you, oh, you're beautiful, it's instilled in you that you are beautiful no matter what. It don't matter how you look. You could have a head the size of a damn grapefruit.
Right, right.
You know, you still
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, you can have, a birthmark on your face. You're still beautiful. You can have different flaws, but you're still beautiful because it makes you you. So a lot of people don't have that. They don't have that instilled in them from their people, and they feel like, they're not beautiful, or they have to do other things that make them beautiful or make them who they are. But once it's put in you, and that's where the saying, it's in me, not on me. So that's one of the things that was instilled in me. So it's in me and it ain't on me. Now, do I walk with it? Head held high. You know, when I walk in, I feel like I'm the baddest in the room. Got to. So it's in me and on me at the same time. But
Yeah.
I got it from just being around women. Just, that's why I don't want to say I'm a girl's girl, because I can't stand females. I got more male friends than I have females. But if I'm out and a woman is pretty, I will say, oh my God, you're beautiful. Like, you're pretty. So you instill that into somebody else. and they may not feel that way about themselves, but you may tell them and they go home like, damn, somebody told me I was beautiful today, or I was cute, or whatever the case may be. Somebody complimented me on this. That may help them with their confidence. So I just always have been, that's all. It's where that's where it came from. It's just having it instilled in me. That's all from growing up. Like my uncles, remember you're beautiful. Remember you're this. Remember you're that.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes from. Just having it instilled in me from family and friends, and you do got them ones that's haters that they know your outfit is cute. They know your hair is cute. But they won't tell you. So
Yo,
you just kind of roll with the
again,
punches.
like you said a lot of things there that's actually really beautiful, to think about, right? That a lot of times when we think about confidence, we think about something that we have to work at, right? There was some things that we have to kind of muster up, the journey that we go on to like love ourselves and accept ourselves. But you're coming from a perspective of which you were surrounded by people who you gain that strength from directly, right? And then how you felt about yourself was reinforced by just generations and generations of women in your family and uncles and your grandparents and your great grandparents. And that's beautiful. That's something that a lot of times we don't hear people talking about, because I do think that we do inherit, just like we inherit some of the issues and the problems and the drama in our family, we also inherit a lot of the strength, a lot of that love, a lot of how we see ourselves. Like if you come from one of them
Mm-hmm.
families that's pretty popular in the city, like you walk around different. That's how it was
Yeah.
with us in St. Louis. Like I come from one of them families that if I said the last name, a lot of people know, and we walked around with that confidence and that pride. But it's crazy because I've never really thought about it until you said what you said today. So thank you for sharing. So it seems as if you have a generally like a positive attitude as it pertains to, I mean, your body and how you present. So when you hear the term body positivity, because that's the buzzword that's going around lately, what immediately comes to
Mm-hmm.
mind for you?
I think it's just being confident in your body and what you have. Because everybody's body's different. Nobody looks like um the next person unless you go to the same doctor as the next person. But being confident in who you are is what I feel like body positivity is. Sometimes people try to, what's the word I want to use? Try to put us all in one big category.
Okay.
But no matter what type of body you have, you deserve that positivity.
Hmm.
No matter if you a stick, if you chubby, if you curvy, if you fat, if you know muscular, whatever, however you're shaped, you're supposed to have that positivity. You're supposed to have that positivity within yourself or from some other people. So it should be an equal thing across the board, but it's not. You have some that are treated differently because they look this way versus somebody that looks this way. So I just feel like it should just be one thing across the board. Like no matter how you shape, no matter how you look, you're supposed to have that positivity about your body, whether it's from yourself or somewhere else. It's easier
Right,
said
of
than
course,
done.
of course. But I'm glad that you said that, right? Because I think sometimes when we think about like blanket statements or terms like body positivity, it's like, yeah, being
Hmm.
positive about your body. But it's very hard to, I guess, group all people into one category, because we all have different
Right.
experiences based on how we show up. But the idea of body
Hmm.
positivity that I love what you said is that no matter how you look, so if you're skinny, if you're curvy, if you're thick, if you whatever you may look like, you deserve to love yourself as you are, right?
Yes.
But how do you think the idea of body positivity is? Do you think it's embraced by our culture?
Nowadays, yes.
Okay, talk to me.
Nowadays, I feel like in our culture, in the African American culture, it's more it's more on preference. So it's what he or she prefers. So I feel like if a man or a woman prefers a certain body, that's what they like. That's what they go with. You have some that like the plastic. You have some that don't like the natural. I think it's. I think it boils down to it's back to society as well. Because if society makes it okay in our culture sometimes, then it's fine. But if society doesn't make it okay in our culture, then it's not okay in our culture. Does that make
Yeah,
sense of what
it
I'm
makes
saying?
sense.
So like,
No, that's one
go
thing
ahead.
that I'm conscious nowadays not to be swayed too much by society. Cause we
Mm-hmm.
kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Back then you didn't want me. Now I'm hot. They all on me. Like
Yeah.
one minute something can be extremely desirable in society, and then the next minute everything can totally flip on that, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
our love for ourselves is the treated the same way, then we never really give ourselves the opportunity to really embrace who we are and love ourselves authentically. And I think that's crazy. So as far as like body positivity, is this something that I know you mentioned just being extremely confident. Is this something that you think about like regularly, or is this something that you're just not really conscious about at this point? It's more unconscious or it's in your subconscious.
When I was growing up, I used to think about it, especially like when I got in high school and stuff. Because in high school you do a lot. In high school you go on a prom. In high school, you that's when everybody's talking to the boys. Unless you was fast, then you was doing it before the mama. She didn't play that.
Okay.
So you went to school, you went to get your grades, you went, and that was it. That's what you did. But it was times I've not always I've always been confident. I've Let me say that I've always been
Okay.
secure.
Okay.
Let's say this. I've always been secure. Now in high school and stuff, I was the tall. Well, even in middle school, I was the tallest. I was the more developed.
Okay.
So I've always been secure. Now, always being confident. It came because when I was in high school, I was the bigger girl again. So, like I said, it came to me over time. Like Brittany, you are cute. You are who you are. So it just me knowing who I was, I guess, because you gotta love yourself before anybody else could love you. So it was just having to love me. You gotta love yourself, regardless. Period. Because if you don't, you can't expect nobody else to love you for who you are. So, like I said, whether you blue, black, orange, green, fat, small, skinny, whatever the case may be, if you don't love that self, then you can't. Nobody can
I
love
mean
you,
that's
regardless.
that's true, right? It sounds a lot easier said than done. However, I was actually having a conversation with another friend of mine, and the insecurity industry is a billion-dollar industry, right? You got people
Mm-hmm.
who make a living off of selling insecurities so that they can
Yeah.
provide a remedy for that said insecurity. Right around the time I want to say when I was at UMKC, this is like 2011, I was starting to lose my
Yeah.
hair actually, but nobody knew it for like 5 years because I bought everything that you can think about at every beauty supply store to cover it and hide it. Then one time my mother was just like, hey, like, you can get a procedure done to take care of that. So I googled this
Mm-hmm.
procedure, and this procedure was about $3,000. I'm
How
in
much did?
college, so I'm literally sitting here thinking like I can pay $3,000 to quote unquote fix something that's wrong with me, or I can change my way of thinking and be comfortable with it, or even if I didn't want to wait and learn to be comfortable with it, it's more of a $20 haircut that could fix this issue. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And so I think that one of the biggest problems as it pertains to like body positivity and overcoming like insecurities, I think sometimes people want quick results. They don't take time to do like the shadow work, the work that you have to do when nobody's around to really just be
Yeah.
comfortable in your skin. And what end up happening is you'll get these surgeries, you'll do whatever you need, whatever society tells you you need to do to be more confident, to be more body positive, to be more comfortable. But because you haven't changed how you think, you'll just find another insecurity to put in its place.
That's true. That's
You
true.
know,
Because people go and have these surgeries and these BBLs and stuff, and then if you ain't did like you said the work, you're not gonna be comfortable with it. You're not gonna be happy with it. You can That's like having all the money in the world, but you don't pray, or you don't budget well. You're gonna lose all your money because you ain't do what you're supposed
right.
to do with it. You didn't do the
Right.
right thing.
But see, society will tell
So
you that, using that example, right? Society will tell you the same way they tell you about your body, like money will make you happy, or getting, the
mhm.
newest clothes will make you feel better about yourself. And then you do all of those things and you don't feel better about yourself. And then it
No.
almost leaves you in a situation where you feel worse than what you did before, because now you have everything that you thought would fulfill you and make you feel good, but those
hmm
things didn't work. So then it's like, what do I
No.
do? So yeah, this is really good. I'm really glad to be going down this route. So just to kind of switch up the gears a little bit. This is the Bear With Me podcast, and one of the reasons why I called it Bear With Me, capital BARE, is because I wanted people to really get raw, like nude in a sense. It's kind of a play on words, right? Because I am a
hmm
nudist, but also I want to create conversations where people are able to bear with bear with me as we have these deep conversations about society, about culture, about our bodies, about nakedness, about all of these things. So shifting the gears a little bit, when you hear the term nudism or nudist, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
You don't like clothes.
Oh, okay. So you going all the way to the okay that someone doesn't like clothes.
Yeah.
Okay. What?
Like if I didn't know what it actually meant, I would just feel like I would feel like it's somebody that does not like clothes. Now, if that is that the actual definition and what it is, I'm not sure.
Yeah. No, I don't. I
But
don't think nudists or most nudists even like hate clothing. I think it's more of a idea or a way of life. Is
okay.
people who feel more comfortable or have grown to a
Mm-hmm.
point of feeling extremely comfortable outside of constraints, outside of clothing.
Okay.
And these people enjoy this state whenever possible. So within like
Okay.
our community, a person who I guess identifies with the true ideals of nudism, like they won't just be that guy, that weird person who's like naked by themselves on the beach, exposing themselves to the general public where it's not permissible or permitted. It's really about following the rules of society and wherever you are, but also taking advantage of the opportunity to be comfortable as you can be, given that, particular scenario. But you went all the way to the opposite and said, "Oh, people that hate clothes," and I get that. I get that because people, when they find out, that this is a lifestyle that I practice, they're like, "Wait, do you like hate clothes?" I'm like, "Actually, no, I don't. I just really don't want to wear them." If that makes sense.
Okay.
But so, is the term nudism, was this something that you've heard of before or previous, to our conversations?
I've heard people I've heard people say like, "Oh, I'm a nudist," but I've never like had a conversation about it. Like I've heard people say it, but I've never like went in depth and had a conversation like, okay, well, what is it? Why are you a nudist? I've never went down into, I guess you could say, that rabbit hole. I've never went in to figure out why and to deep dive more into it. I haven't done that
So,
before. No.
well, first off, welcome to the rabbit hole. So, why not? Why do you think you've never, when you've heard people say that, why do you think you never inquired more? Is it because it's kind of like taboo? It's something that's not really talked about in society, and so there's really no interest, or maybe a fear?
I just think it was one of those things where with like me and my homegirls or me and my homeboys be talking, and especially my homegirls, they be like, "Oh, I'm a nudist. I don't, and I think this is where I got the thought in my mind of, it's just people that don't like clothes because they be like, oh, I'm a nudist. I don't like clothes. I don't like wearing them. I hate putting them on. So I just be like, okay, you know what I'm saying? You don't like them. That's cool. I don't like clothes either. I walk in my house and I strip it down. Whatever. So it just will come up in conversation that way, and we'll go on and keep it moving.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not something that we ever like actually sat down and talked about. Like I have, one of my homegirls, she done been to a nude beach. She done, did like nude runs and stuff. She done all kind of stuff, but I I've never like I said, asked her any of those questions because like I said, it's one of those things where it comes up, they say it, and then we move on to the next thing,
Okay. No, that
Um, especially if we sitting around drinking or whatever the
yeah.
case may
I mean,
be.
that's understandable. So just for the for the nature of the conversation, like when your homegirl would tell you about these experiences, if you had to think about it, like right now, like what would you think? What would be your initial reaction if she told you that today?
That she was a
That she
nudist.
went on like, to the beaches, to these different runs, like what would you think?
The same. I probably would think the same. No, I probably wouldn't think the same thing because when she first told us that she went, I'm like, girl, you crazy. Like, why would you do that? And then, like, why would you go running naked? Why would you go on a nude beach? But now it's like I probably would ask more questions like, what made you, get into nudism? What made you become a nudist?
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, to get more
Yeah,
into it.
I think, asking follow up questions are really important, right? Because I think that when I first started telling people, one of the things that I was most afraid about was people's reactions and either the lack of asking for clarity or for them to kind of already have a preconceived notion of what they thought I was doing based on the lifestyle that I chose, right? So it's like those follow up questions are huge because a lot of times when you're at like nudist events or beaches and or any of these things, you actually learn a lot about people. Like the conversations that we're having today are pretty common amongst our community because people are coming from all over the world, all different cultural backgrounds, all economic backgrounds, ethnicities, all of these different, you know, multi-generational. It's just so much diversity that you'll see in these spaces. And so one thing that we learned is that a lot of times our experiences are very similar that brought us to, being nudist, right? And it's this idea that we just have a desire to be comfortable in our skin. We show that through not covering it up necessarily. So I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage you to, after this episode, talk to your friend about, use this episode as a way to break the ice. Tell her like, hey, I got a homeboy that just had me on the podcast and we had the most interesting conversation today, which made me think about you. Why you going on a run? Like, you know what I mean?
Right. I'm gonna have to
I'm
ask her.
curious to I'm curious to see what she says and would love to, maybe have her on the show to kind of talk about it.
Oh, I for sure would ask her.
Hey, shout out to that friend. Maybe it's a possible connection in the future. So when like another reason why I was really hesitant to really, share my experience early on is because this idea that, naturism, nudism is taboo. Why do you think it'll be something that's viewed as taboo within the black community?
You asked me what do I think is taboo in the
No, I
black
was
community.
asking like I was saying that, one of the reasons why I was really hesitant early on to share, this is my, this is how I am, right? Was because, it's often viewed as being taboo in black communities. So I was like, why do you
Mm.
think nudism is taboo or considered taboo amongst black people?
Our community, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, is very judgmental.
Mm.
If it's out of the norm, it ain't right to people. So you may have some people that feel like, okay, it's weird. You know what I'm saying? That's, nowadays everybody throw the word weird around. Everybody weird. That's weird. This is weird. So in our culture, if it's out of the norm, it's weird. So I could understand why it took you a while to come to the forefront, because not I'm not saying that you felt that you were going to be judged. I don't want
Oh
you to
no,
think
you
that.
that's
That's what I'm
correct though. I
saying.
definitely thought that I was gonna be judged. I think about it even as we record this podcast, that when I drop this episode, depending on the medium and who listens to it, they're definitely gonna judge it. But I'm more okay with that now.
Yeah, some people, like I said, in our culture, they're judgy, or like I said, if it's not in the norm, that it's wrong and this and that. But everybody doing something that ain't normal. Everybody doing something that's different. Everybody doing that something that's weird. You can be putting premium gas in your car and they're gonna say the shit's weird. I mean, hey, I
Right.
mean, it is what it is. But I think that's the biggest thing, is that our culture, the black culture, is, especially if you grew up with those strict parents, those parents that this is what it should be, this is what it is, and it shouldn't be no different. Uh, it If it's not normal, it's
Okay.
wrong.
I mean, yeah,
So
I can relate to that. Just growing up in our culture and kind of getting the similar messages from friends and family. But I wanted to see what you think about this, because another reason why I think a lot of people view it as being taboo is because they automatically link nudism or just being naked, period, with sexuality and sex. And as you know, in our community, sexuality is something that's often viewed as being taboo as well. Do you think that may have, maybe plays a role in why um, black folk, think that, nudism could be taboo?
yeah, a lot of things in our community are tied back to sex in general. It's how do I want to say it? Sex is everywhere.
Okay, that is true.
Sex is everywhere. So a person that somebody, if I came and said to you like, oh, if you weren't nudist, you know what I'm saying, and you didn't do the deep dive and you didn't know the things that you know now, and I came and said, oh, Jay, I'm a nudist, you know what I'm saying, this is what I like, you can be like, oh, well, you know what I'm saying, is it because you like having sex? And I think it's because people, nude equals sex to people.
Exactly. Exactly.
if they don't if they don't do the work, nude is sex. So if you naked, you want to have sex. If you know what I'm saying, you naked, you doing this, you doing that. But that again is not what it is. But that's our culture, and I don't want to say that's just our culture. That's any culture, honestly.
Yeah.
Nude
I
equals
mean,
sex.
absolutely. But, even just kind of thinking about the history of, black people in this country and how our bodies have kind of been objectified, through slavery and like,
Mm-hmm.
our bodies were like taken away from us. We were
Yeah.
property. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's no surprise that there's that automatic connection nowadays, because historically that was what was said about us, right? One of the
Right.
ways to keep the wives of slave owners away from slaves that was working in the field was to create these stereotypes about their bodies, about their genitalia, you know what I mean, that wasn't always true necessarily, but it was said to scare white women, you know what I mean. So it definitely makes sense. But I don't think that many people in our community nowadays, or especially in nudist communities, we don't have these conversations. There's all these. One of
No.
the main questions that I get every time I show up or I show up to events or I see things online is like, why aren't there more black people? And what they don't realize is that we have our own associations. Like I'm a member. I'm an ambassador of the Black Naturists Association. We have about 360 members worldwide, right? We're here. However, There's a need to still a need even in these spaces to feel safe and to feel protected because of history. And I think a lot of times people focus on the utopia of, like the hippie-ness of being naked, and they don't think about history and how it plays a role in, creating safe spaces for some people versus others. So now, now I'm thinking about it, it actually makes sense of the, that connection. It just gives me that much more, I guess, a task to kind of fight, to continue to have these conversations so we can kind of break this down. You know what I mean? That was actually, like I said originally, that was the vision behind this podcast, is to take the conversations that I would have, at a new beach or at an event, because we were just really being raw and free with one another, and have these conversations in spaces where, I have similar relationships with people. We just haven't had that kind of conversation. So with that being said, I mean, we coming up on like 45 minutes. We put some time in today. You dropped a lot of gems. I'm definitely looking forward to kind of playing this back and kind of just sitting with this being one of the earlier episodes, and just really figuring out a way to kind of continue to gauge these type of conversations as we move forward. But I really do thank you. I appreciate you for your time. I thank you for your thoughts. Any last minute things or you want to talk about on the subject, or questions you may have?
No, just people have to learn that in our society, you have to be who you want to be. You're gonna be judged either way. You're gonna be judged if you try to fit in. You're gonna be judged if you do your own thing. So if you're gonna be judged, why not just do your own thing and be who you are? Confidence comes from within. So if, like I said earlier in the show, if you love yourself, you gotta love yourself before anybody else can love you, regardless if it's friend, foe, relationship, whatever the case may be. You have to instill that in you and love you. So just be who you are, because at the end of the day, you go to sleep by yourself, you wake up by yourself. Even in a relationship, you gotta be good and be happy with self, because if not, it ain't no reason. I mean, it's you gonna live regardless, but I'd rather you live and be happy with self than live and hate yourself, because it ain't no fun. So just be who you are at the end of the day.
I mean, I think that's a good way to end the show. Yeah, all of that energy. Thank you so much, Britt, for joining in on the conversation.
No
I look
problem,
forward
anytime.
to, possibly having you on again in the future, and just being able to share more of these conversations with you and others in our community. But thank you all for joining today's episode for the Bear With Me podcast. I'm your host, Jay. I've been joined by Britt today. And on that note, we'll see you later. Bear with me.